Hey besties, Monica Ferguson here and welcome to World Domination. This is a safe space for absolute legends who are bold enough and brave enough to go within, to recreate their belief system, to aim high, to chase their wildest dreams and become everything that they are destined to be. This is a space for people who are serious about growth, about healing. We talk about all things mind, body, spirit, and we have the courage to go further than most people even dare to dream. Welcome, let's get into it. Hey, beautiful people, Monica Ferguson here, and welcome to this week's episode where we welcome back my Scottish pal, Mr. Stephen Burns, who I've done a couple of episodes now with. Mindset master, he has thousands of students all around the world. He is the man when it comes to the subconscious mind, which, as we all know, I'm obsessed with because 95% of our mind is subconscious, right? So if we're talking about change and transformation and results, this is who we want to talk to. Now, in our last episode, we actually talked about forgiveness and we referred a lot to forgiving other people. And so this week, I really wanted us to talk about forgiving ourselves. How do we forgive ourselves? How do we let go of the past? How do we move forward without dragging the past with us all the time, right? So let's get into it, guys. Let me know your aha moments. Welcome back, Mr. Burns.
It's great to be here once again. I can't believe that's been, 12 weeks since the last? Is that right? 12 weeks? No, it can't be as long as that.
Maybe a couple of months, but I think we know that we're getting old because we constantly say, doesn't the time just fly?
Oh, honestly, I've become obsessed with almost every minute, trying to make every minute count these days, but I think I've got a few years on you, Monica.
There is no polite answer for me to say back to that. No! You're only 30, you're 30 in spirit, all right? It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 47 actually in 2 weeks' time, I think, but 47 is a new 27. Let's be honest.
You don't look 47 though. I can say that with 100% truthfulness.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
I reckon I would have said 40 probably.
Well, that's good.
But no one else can see you. Yeah, they just have to take my word for it. A young 47, folks. Yeah.
I'll definitely take that.
Because you're Cancer as well, aren't you? You're a Cancer?
I am, yeah. So 15th of July is my birthday. So are you also Cancer?
Yeah, my birthday was last week.
All right. Well, happy birthday. All the very intelligent and beautiful people are all Cancerians, clearly, and I'm not biased at all.
No, that's what I've been saying too. Okay, so this is how do I segue from that into our topic in a cool way? I have no idea how to link that actually. Although what we could say is to get to a space of self-love like this, you first must go through a lot of self-forgiveness. I think that's
a really good segue, and I think actually one of the things that personally, not I've learned, but in the process of learning as I get older, is that you really do have to forgive yourself for a lot of things. I think we all make mistakes, don't we? And I think you do reach a point in your life where you look back and you stop like blaming yourself for all of the bad things that happen to you, that you don't have to shoulder all the blame and responsibility when things don't quite go your way. That it's good to cut yourself some slack and let go of all of that responsibility that you've been shouldering. And yeah, and I think that's all about self-forgiveness, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And for anyone who hasn't listened to our last episode, they should, because that was all around forgiving other people, right? Like coming to peace within ourselves for what other people have done. And I was so excited to talk about this because I seriously believe that the ability to forgive ourselves for the past and let things go is the greatest thing we can do. Like I know for myself, it was the number one thing that transformed everything. And so much of that came from learning NLP and hypnotherapy and learning how, shut up, go and get his course, guys. It's amazing. But like understanding the role of the subconscious mind. And so instead of being like, oh my God, I'm such a failure and I'm such a loser and I'm not good enough and I'm at a certain point and I should be here and comparing myself to everyone else. When I understood that, oh my God, my mind is just trying to protect me because I had hideous amounts of trauma and domestic violence and abuse as a child. So naturally, my mind has some issues with me suddenly launching myself out into the world where I'm open and exposed, Whereas like I've learned my entire life to protect myself. So it's not that I'm a failure and I'm unworthy, it's that there's a part of me that doesn't yet feel safe. That switch was like, oh my God, I don't have to hate myself anymore. I can actually look within in terms of like through a compassionate lens instead of judgment. That was the game changer. Because from that point, it's like you're exploring yourself to understand why things have happened instead of shaming yourself. And I feel like those two things, like shame and self forgiveness, really went hand in hand. Like the ability to release shame came from the ability to understand my mind and forgive myself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny because people often do think of forgiveness as something that you extend to someone else. So you've maybe been wronged or betrayed, and you have to kind of let go of all of that anger, hurt, and resentments. But it is true, a big part of forgiveness is to forgive yourself, where you've had some sort of bad experience happen in the past or a range of bad experiences, and you go through that healing process where you let that go and you stop blaming yourself. And it can be big things, but it can also be simple things as well, can't it? Like, for example, maybe you've got a goal that you have and you struggle to achieve it, and you internalize that failure, so-called failure, and you decide to blame yourself. And clearly that's evidence that you're a total loser and you're not good enough. Or you maybe fail in a relationship, or the relationship breaks up for whatever reason, and you blame yourself. Clearly you're not attractive enough. Or you lose your job, and that means you're a total failure as well. And this is this process that we tend to go through as human beings, isn't it? We often just take events like that and twist and distort them and then turn them on ourselves. But I think when we go through a healing process of realizing that you don't have to shoulder all of that responsibility, when bad things happen, it's almost not because you're a total loser. There is always learning to be taken from those experiences, of course, so that you can improve as a person moving forward. But at the end of the day, there are so many factors around, things that maybe don't quite go your way, that it's just blatantly wrong to blame yourself. So I do love, like you were talking about self-compassion there. I think ultimately that is what it's all about. I don't want to go down a too cheesy a route here, but it is kind of
Oh,
all
do
about
it.
loving.
Come on,
Yeah,
Steph.
go for it. Let's go full cheese,
Oh,
Monica.
jeez.
But it is all about self-love at the end of the day. And I do believe that when we start to unpick some of the things in the past that we've been blaming ourselves for, and we go through that healing process and forgive ourselves, then we do return to that place where we naturally love ourselves. I do think that's a default place for us. So yeah. So I think we really need to stop shouldering all of the responsibility for the things that maybe don't quite go our way, and start to see I guess, the amazing person that we are.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things in there that I want to talk. I should have honestly taken notes. Um, Yeah, I this idea I've been playing with this so much lately around our natural default state. Because something okay, say like default, whatever. But you know how people talk about be grateful. If you feel miserable and find things to be grateful for. And I actually disagree. I think that if you feel like trash and you're like, oh, I'm trying to be grateful, but you don't feel grateful, there's no point in that. What I think is remove the things that prevent you from feeling grateful, which is your natural state, and you'll naturally rise back up again into gratitude, right? And I so agree with what you just said about our default setting is self love, but we've been so conditioned and programmed to hate ourselves, to believe that we're not good enough, to believe that we need to look different or be different or have more things, or we have to be in this relationship status to be happy. But but then you get in there and there are all these rules, and it's impossible. Like, have you seen the Barbie movie, for example? Like, it's
Well, I actually went to see Oppenheimer instead. I was more
no.
team Oppenheimer, but I've spoken to so many people who have watched Barbie. I feel like I know the movie already, but I hear it's a very clever movie.
Yeah, well, there was one scene, there's this speech that America Ferrera gives, and it's amazing. And it's just this list. It's very focused on women, obviously, but it's spoken to all of the rules and requirements, that you have to be like this, but not like this. And they're all conflicting ideas. And so it's like, we're screwed. Like, if we play by society's rules, we're screwed. You literally cannot win. The system is rigged for us to lose, right? This is just what I think. So I've been obsessed lately. I've been studying shame because I think it is so fascinating. And for this exact reason, it's like She was talking the other day about how shame will make us super sensitive. And like this is what you were saying before about yeah, we'll internalize everything and make it about us. Like something external happened, it must be because I'm not good enough. And it actually makes us quite selfish because we literally think the world revolves around us and everything is, and it's like, it's not. Someone just had a bad day. It's not because you're a shit human, like, and all these sorts of things. And I just think, yeah, honestly, I could rant about this stuff. See, this topic is too big. How do we do this in one,
It,
one
it's a, yeah,
episode?
this is part one. It's funny you touched on something interesting there because one of my coaches, so she was how can I put this? She was a bit of a ball buster. So she used to ask
Okay.
these like razor sharp questions that forced me to like just like confront the crap that I was experiencing. And she said that if you're blaming yourself and if you're feeling shameful about something, then it's actually an egotistical practice. And I was like, what? Because I thought it was the opposite. But she kind of made sense because she said, well, if you genuinely think that people are that bothered about what you do and what you say, then that's a pretty big ego that you've got. And when she said this to me, honestly, I was like, I can't believe what you've just said to me, but it really did force me up against the edge of my problem. And it caused it to crack because she was kind of right. A lot of the time, most of the time, people have got their own stuff going on. They don't really care what you do too much. People care for you, of course, but they're not really that bothered if you mess up or if you make a fool of yourself or you do something wrong or you fail, if we want to put that label on it, because they've got their own stuff going on. I remember years ago, I was so I used to work in the oil and gas industry. I don't know if I mentioned this. A sign of age, I forget the stories that I tell. I maybe even said that during the last episode as well. But so one of the things I did at the start of my career in the oil and gas industry was they took us up to the north of Scotland and we did an outward bounds course. So that's basically where you go and sort of jump in, lochs and rivers and, you climb trees and various different things. It was great fun. To be honest, it was the best thing I ever did in that career within the space of like 20 years of working with them. And we did this thing called a trapeze jump. And this was basically where you have to climb up this tall, thin pole. And you're harnessed in, of course, so you're completely safe. And you eventually get to this little small platform at the top of the pole, and you've got to jump off and grab onto this trapeze. So I was last to go out of all of my co-workers. So I was only like, I think I was 17, 18 at the time. I was an apprentice. And, there was so much going on in my head. Number one, I was a bit scared of heights. So I was pretty terrified because of that. But number two, and this was the main thing, was everybody else had managed to succeed before me. So I had this extra weight that I had placed on myself that I had to succeed here, or that meant that I was a total loser, a total failure. So again, I was taking responsibility that I shouldn't really be taking. And so I got up this to the top of this little platform, and I kind of braced myself. I was super scared, super nervous, and I jumped off and I missed the trapeze. So I was the first person out of the whole group to completely miss it. But of course, because of that, I kind of like started dangling back and forward, and the harness kicked in. And I looked down and I saw my friends down there, and they didn't really care. And it was a big revelation to me because I realized I was safe because the harness had kicked in, but also realized that all of this nonsense, these expectations that we place on ourselves to be a certain way, to be perfect, they don't really apply in reality. They're just ideas that we've subscribed to. And when I got down, my friends had a good wee laugh and stuff, but actually at the end of the day, nobody cared. Nobody died. Everyone was alive. And it is that whole thing, isn't it, about fear? It's the acronym false evidence appearing real. And I think that was the kind of realization I got there. But so I think you're totally right. I think we have all these rules, we have all these expectations that we place on ourselves, and shame. That's maybe a good topic for the next episode,
Mm.
Monica. But shame is definitely one of those where we have these standards that we feel that we have to live by, but no one really cares. So why are we shouldering all that responsibility?
I love it. In the most positive way, no one cares. And
Yeah,
it's so
exactly.
true, though. It's so true. I've noticed this, like, So I've lately been posting a lot more on TikTok and stuff like that, places where you're really visible. It's the quickest way to scare the shit out of yourself, right? Oh, fear of visibility and all this stuff comes up. And it's so funny because the first few that I did, I was like sweating. It was like when I started this podcast. It was horrible. Like, oh, I was like, what am I doing? Just burn it all down to the ground, you know? But what I noticed on TikTok was that when I watched other people's videos, I did not care about any of the things that I worried about in regards to myself. Like I'll be on camera and I'm like, every hair has to be perfect. Like I need to look perfect. I need to sound, everything has to be perfect, perfect music, perfect text, perfect colors. Like, and I watched other people record literally videos lying in their bed with shitty light, with pimple patches on, you know, those stickers that you put on your pimples. And I'm like, wow, because I'm listening to the content. I'm not even, I don't care how it's delivered, you know. And I'm like, isn't this so interesting? Like, I don't care at all when it's someone else. So this is just my insecurities coming up, my fear coming up, and then I'm projecting it out and assuming that everyone else thinks the same thing, but no one cares. The only people, they just want to know, am I saying something that's useful to them or not? That's it. Liberating, actually.
It's very liberating, and we do seem to hold ourselves to higher standards for things like that than we do for other people. It's kind of weird, isn't it, when you think about it? It's like we're climbing up a hill, like carrying a rucksack full of heavy boulders. We're making it so much harder than what it needs to be.
Yeah.
But, it's time to empty that rucksack, so to speak. I had a similar experience when I first started doing video, Monica. So I actually had a phobia of seeing myself on camera. I don't know if you've ever had that before, but I'm
No.
totally fine now. I've edited like, hundreds of hours worth of video of myself, and I'm so desensitized to it. But at the time, I did not like seeing myself on camera. It totally freaked me out. And a friend of mine at the time asked me to do some video. And honestly, I was like stumbling and stuttering through this video. I was trying to tell stories that I'd told multiple times before in training rooms, and I couldn't tell them. And it was because I had this phobia of being seen on camera, and because I held myself to these unbelievable standards whenever I saw myself on a camera, but I didn't apply those to anyone else. And I find that
Mm.
really interesting. And you're right. I think as soon as I realized that, it was very, very liberating. I thought, you know what? You don't have to apply those standards to yourself. You're shouldering far too much responsibility. And I guess that's what self-forgiveness is all about, isn't it? It's about realizing, cutting yourself some slack and realizing that you're good enough right now. You don't have to take on all of that blame, all of that responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I don't know if this is true or not. I'll let you confirm this. But I actually heard today that the two core limiting beliefs are I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. Um, and those two certainly were things that I had to work through, and they still pop up from time to time. And every single person that I work with says the same thing. And it's just really interesting because, yeah, these are the things we have to work through, but we don't look at other people ever and think you're not good enough. But it is this internalized thing, and it's crazy. It's like there's so much unlearning. But I think it's interesting hearing you speak about the video thing too, because it's like the process that we go through when you have that epiphany moment of like, whoa, I'm like my biggest enemy right now. What am I doing? And like you would never speak to your friend like that. And I started saying to myself, like, okay, how can I act like what's actually going on right now? Like this is just fear. What's actually going on? And I literally coached myself. I was like, well, I just had the courage to get up and post content that I know is going to impact people on a platform that anyone in the world can see. Like that's amazing, you know, with wisdom and knowledge that I've spent 10 years integrating and learning and studying for. Like, and then I just got up and made something free that could literally help someone change their life. And I'm sitting here being like, oh my God, but what if I'm not good enough? And it's like, what? You know? And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm actually allowed to still have fear and stumble and grow. And of course, like to give myself grace on that journey without making it mean anything. And I think that's so much of it, isn't it? Is having that kind of foundation in terms of like our own self-concept, that so that when hard things happen or when challenging things happen or when we quote unquote make mistakes or we feel stupid or we feel embarrassed, we can always come back to this baseline belief that we have that actually we accept ourselves, we love ourselves, we celebrate ourselves, like we're proud of ourselves. And that's the work, I reckon. To do that first, right?
Yeah, it's funny. A client of mine used to tell me that if she talked to other people the way that she talked to herself inside her mind, then she would be arrested because
Yeah.
it was such violent self-talk. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think the whole sort of not good enough and not worthy and feelings of not being accepted. So these are all very core beliefs that we have as human beings. And I think because we're such a social species, we have to, in order to get on in life, we have to socialize, we have to network, we have to offer value to people in order to be deemed to be valuable. So I think there
Mm.
is this kind of game that we end up getting pulled into, that we start to believe that if we are not perfect in some way, then we're not good enough to be accepted. I think a lot of this is created during our sort of socialization period as well, where we were teenagers, and they stick with us, and which is a real shame. And a big part of self forgiveness is about going back and just letting go of all of that, and so that we can return to that wonderful base setting where we do actually love ourselves. For me, I look at it. There's
Mm.
two different types of change that we can experience. The first type is where we build new things in our life. So we build confidence, or we build a sense of identity, or we build self-belief. But I think another form of change, which in my opinion is the most powerful, is when we unpick all of the crap, when we forgive ourselves and heal all of the wounds. All of a sudden, something amazing and beautiful starts to shine through, that default state of happiness.
Yeah.
I heard that it was a story. I think it encompasses this quite well. So it was a story about, it's a fictitious story, not a true story, but it was about a
Definitely
painter
true.
and yeah, yeah, bit of a disclaimer there. So it was about a painter and a sculptor, and they were having a conversation one day, and the painter turned round to the sculptor and said, "How is it that you can carve such beautiful statues out of these big, ugly lumps of stone?" And the sculptor says, "Well, in actual fact, I don't. In actual fact, the statue is already alive inside the stone, and all I do is chip away at what doesn't belong and chisel and refine what's already there." And I love this story. I come back to this time and time again, and I remind myself of it too, especially if I'm going through difficult times, or if I've had a big event that's maybe not gone my way. That's just nonsense at the end of the day. That I think inside everyone there is a beautiful statue, and a lot of the work that we do is about chipping away what doesn't belong and chiseling and refining what's already there.
Yeah, I love this. We've got a real theme going, a good metaphor. So good. Because that's it, isn't it? Like we know that intrinsically, I mean, whatever we believe spiritually or whatever, it's like I believe everyone is a soul, right? Everyone is like made of like pure love essence, which is so beautiful, which is like when we strip back all of these limiting beliefs and this crap and this fear and the shame and the self-judgment, we naturally rise back up again. It's like just like I was saying before, this gratitude thing. It's like when you take away the fear and the crap, you naturally are just grateful. You don't need to make yourself be grateful. You just naturally are. I love this so much. So, question: when it comes to you yourself, what is your kind of personal practice, or what are the things that have helped you most, like be able to leave your past behind you, unpack the boulder backpack, all of that?
Yeah, so there's a range of techniques, but I think the one that has had the biggest transformational difference over a period of years is a technique called timeline therapy. I don't know if you've heard of it before. I think I do
Yeah,
teach it in the course
and
that
your
you were on.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that this is genuinely. I'm not overstating this, but it genuinely saved my life. There's no doubt about it. So, for those of you who are listening who have never heard of this before, so timeline therapy is where you go back into your past and you let go of the negative associations that you have with past memories, because it basically goes along the idea that all of the problems that we experience right now are as a result of how we are still responding to the past. Now, of course, the past is over. The past doesn't exist. It's just a concept inside our mind, and we don't have a time machine. We can't go back. But what we can do is we can change our perception of the past and how we relate to it. And when you do that, you get this amazing release, and it can just lead to tremendous healing. And to the extent where you can experience complete resolution for some really, really big problems. And I've gone through this many, many times myself. And I think that's given me the biggest release. And I found that the more I take myself through timeline techniques like that, then the more I just feel amazing just by default, and the more gratitude I have to life. The way I like to think about it is, it's like if you've ever like went to see a movie a second time, but maybe a few years later. So, and then you notice different things about that movie. For example, when I first went to see Pulp Fiction, I don't know if you've seen it, Monica, cult classic, Quentin Tarantino. I absolutely hated it. I didn't get it. I went to see it when I was 19 or 20. And I was like, what's going on with this movie? It's all over the place. There's no structure. John Travolta gets shot in one scene, then he's alive in the next one. What the heck is going on? But then I waited 10 years, and I went back and watched it again. And I was like, wow, this movie is absolutely amazing. That I could look back and see things that I didn't see the first time because I was looking back through older and wiser eyes. And that's what you do when you do timeline therapy. You're going back to your previous memories, and you're looking on through older and wiser eyes, and you're giving that younger you some advice. You're getting some learnings that can allow you to release those old memories. And the difference this can make is just unbelievable.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yes. And so many of my, not current problems, but, resistance that I've encountered, when I've got to the root of it, it has been my younger self. Again, like I keep talking about this, like my childhood stuff, this violent thing where it was like, it has triggered so much healing in me, starting a business, starting a podcast, because it's like, it requires me to be visible, to be seen, to be heard, it has required me to unlearn every single survival strategy that I created as a child. And I had to do it. There was just every single time I was just hitting block after block, like, no, you cannot create a podcast that triggers people, because do you know what happens when you say things that piss people off? Horrible things. And so then, I'd go out and I'd write a post and someone would get triggered and write something on it. And then so my inner child is like, see, it's not safe. It's not safe. And then you kind of go through a few more rounds of self-sabotage, and you shame yourself a bit. And then you think, oh my God, I should be further along. And then you're like, oh, no, actually, this is all it is. This is this part of me that doesn't feel safe, that needs some healing here. Magical. And then, to be able to look back in these situations now and just be like, oh yeah, so that's where that came from, but not be a crying mess on the floor. Like, I can talk about it now because it's just like, it's interesting to understand where these beliefs were formed, but it doesn't stop me from getting on a podcast, Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great sign that you can talk about them as well, and be okay, because that shows amazing progress. And I do think, as young kids, we really do shoulder the responsibility for way too much. A classic example is if you have like a family who's going through a divorce. A lot of the time, the young kids will blame themselves for the divorce, which makes absolute no sense. It's nothing to do with them. It's just because adults sometimes don't get on. But that's what young kids do, because their world is quite small and they don't really know any better. And the timeline process is really about going back and just looking on and appreciating that, you know what? It's not your fault. It never was your fault. And when you do that, the release you can get is just incredible. And yeah, it's just such a profound process.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for being here, and please let me know your aha moments. I want to hear all about them. For extra support, make sure you're following me on TikTok and Instagram at the Monica Ferguson. Check out the School of Greatness for self-study courses, and of course, if you want one-on-one mentoring, just DM me and I would love to have a chat with you. Go and slay the day. Thank you for being you. See you soon.